Now that you've built momentum with the interview prep process, here's part 2 to help you with the specifics of your interview prep so you walk in like a champ. Let's do this. Welcome back to Explearning Communications, where we discuss communication strategies for clearer speech, stronger relationships, and successful careers. In today's video, we are discussing part 2 of the interview prep process to get you ready for your big day. Because there's nothing worse than walking into an interview room super nervous and unprepared, which just sets you up for a catastrophe of an interview. So we don't want that to happen. Instead, we're equipping you with the tools you need to make sure that you check off every single thing in your interview prep checklist so that you walk in with confidence, authenticity, and poise. Are you ready? So before you watch any more of this video, I really encourage you to go to part 1 if you haven't checked that out already, because it gives you the preliminary steps that you'll need to build the momentum of the interview prep process and to make sure that you're going into this process with the right mindset and that you're thinking about a lot of the things that you need to perform successfully in the actual interview, like the vision and the mission and the objectives of the company. So first of all, I don't want you to psych yourself out. There are a lot of jobs out there and you will get the job you want. You just have to be persistent. So here are the strategies that are going to put you in a position to do well in the interview so that you're not freaking out day of, or even in the hours leading up to the interview, because we want to go in with a calm mindset. And the only thing you want to do before your interview is strike a power pose so that you get your confidence ramped up. All right. So the first strategy, I want you to internalize the job description. A lot of times we read the job description and then we forget about it. And then it's as if we walk in and not know what to expect to be talking about. So instead of just walking in with sort of a nebulous understanding of what the interview process is going to look like for that specific position, I want you to really sit down with the job description, make sure that you are clear about the role, meaning you've identified the primary skills, you've understood what the secondary skills are, and then you've taken it a step further and you've read between the lines to infer what the tertiary skills are. So you make sure that you know about the role inside and out so that you're able to more easily and eloquently and thoughtfully speak to how your XP, your experience points, your background, your skills, your expertise tie nicely into what they're looking for in the candidate. So this is very important, and you really have to make sure that you know what the JD is all about. So to recap strategy 1, I want you to make sure that you're very clear, crystal clear on the JD, and that you know what the role entails so that you can frame your responses accordingly. Number 2, consider preparing your points with more clarity. Now, the first thing I want you to think about when you're doing this is to come up with several anecdotes. Anecdotes or stories are really powerful because they paint the picture of what you actually experienced. And to add to that, they also put the hiring manager or the interviewer in your shoes because you're describing the situation. You're giving them some background. You're walking them through, you're walking them down memory lane so that you can really have them understand what you went through and why that was an important experience and how that experience has informed what you can do today and what you've been doing. So it's really important to paint a picture for them, and we do that really well through stories. So make sure that you have at least 2 anecdotes for every skill, every primary skill that is on your resume or is in the job description. Because remember, anything that's on your resume is fair game to ask about. So make sure that you know exactly what you've done. Sometimes we're a little bit rusty. I know we're a little bit rusty on things that we've done, especially if, it was 5 years ago where you had that experience, but that position makes sense to bring up in the context of this new job that you're applying for. So you have to make sure that in addition to knowing the job description, you also know your resume really well. And what this second point does with this strategy of having enough anecdotes to back up your skills, it really helps you refresh your memory about what you've done. So you can never have too many, but you can have too few anecdotes. So if you are an overachiever, then come up with 3 anecdotes per skill. And sometimes there will be overlap. For example, if you're talking about how you're really great running a team because your time management skills are on point, then you might have a very similar or the same anecdote for, let's say, showcasing your proof of performance for your leadership skills, right? So you see how leadership skills and time management might have some overlapping anecdote, and that is fine. Just make sure that you don't, use that anecdote again and again, because that would not make sense in the context of the interview. So you want to make sure that there are different anecdotes for each primary skill that you will talk about in the interview. And what's also great about having prepped those anecdotes in advance is that you can have them translate into something that would be relevant to talking about maybe the role itself. It doesn't necessarily have to showcase and be the proof of performance for that specific skill. It could also be brought up in the context of a position there or why you're a good fit for that role that you're applying for. So these are really versatile, and I want you to have them in your back pocket. In another video, I talked about how anecdotes are interview ammo. So make sure that you have your anecdotes ready. The other thing that you can do, and I do want you to prep for this so that you remember to do it in the interview, is to make sure you slow it down. So are you enunciating? Are you using pauses for buying yourself some thinking time? Are you using silence instead of fillers? Making sure that you're doing all these things and really prepping them in will help you remember in the interview. Because if you overlook it in the interview prep process, then chances are you're not going to remember to do them in the interview. So to sum up strategy 2, what we're doing here is making sure that we have enough clarity in the way we frame our answers. And we do that by having enough anecdotes and the stories to substantiate our claims about what our capabilities are, what our abilities are, and what our skills are, right? Whatever we listed on our resume. And the other thing we do is slowing it down in our speech and having those pauses there so we buy ourselves some thinking time, because that's really important. We don't want to blurt out an answer. We want to think before we speak. My third prep tip for you is all about mise-en-scène with your nonverbals. So for those of you who are aware of acting or maybe have gone to drama school, acting school, you're aware of the mise-en-scène, which is a French term in the context of acting. When you are rehearsing a role, you want to make sure that you're doing all the gestures, all the intonations, the paralinguistics, and the nonverbals, all the things that make up that character, right? So instead of adding these nonverbals and these gestures and different intonation or different diction to your character as you're performing in front of a live audience, you actually rehearse it that way. So in your practice, you want to make sure that you're doing everything that you would be doing for the stage. And this is really important. You might be wondering, well, why is this coming up in the interview prep phase? Well, this is why, because if you don't add it to your practice and to your prep and to your rehearsal, then you're not going to do it in real life. You're not going to do it when it counts. So I want you to make sure that you are doing your mise-en-scène for nonverbals in the prep phase. So what does that mean? Well, you think about the nonverbals that you want to do. So you want to smile, you want to have a relaxed body posture, you want to have good posture, right? Sitting up straight. You don't want to be using your hands so much to make you look kind of stressed or maybe overly enthusiastic, I guess. But you want to make sure that you're doing enough of these sweeping hand gestures that highlight your points, right? The other thing you can think about is making sure that you don't do up talk. You don't end your statement or your comment or your answer with a rising intonation, because that will index uncertainty. Are you asking me a question or are you stating your qualifications? The hiring manager might say to him or herself in their head, right? So Basically, what you're doing here is you're thinking about the types of gestures, the types of nonverbals that you want to incorporate in your interview, and make sure that as you are practicing your elevator pitch, your tell me about yourself, your tell me about your weaknesses, tell me about why you're a good fit for this role, or any other common interview question that you might get asked, you are also adding in prosody, intonation, and stress, emphasis, but also your nonverbals. And this will really help you do that smoothly, and it will come as second nature to you in the interview itself. And of course, it goes without saying, don't cross your arms. You want to make sure that you're exuding confidence. So that is exactly what we want to give off as a message to our hiring manager or the interviewer about who we are and why we're a great fit for this role. It's not just what you say, it's how you say it, right? So mise en scène with nonverbals is so paramount to doing well in the interview. So to sum up strategy 3, we are deliberating over the types of nonverbals we're going to be using, and we're practicing. We're doing the mise en scène for nonverbals so that we know exactly what to do and when, if we can, right? So if it's in your elevator pitch and you have a certain nonverbal that you'd like to use it, provided that it is not going to distract from what you're saying. It is really planned and it comes off as natural. That is what we're going for. Number 4, we want to dress for the part. Now, you probably have heard this, but there's this saying that goes around that's something like, you don't want to dress for the job that you have. You want to dress for the job that you aspire to have or you hope to have someday. The way you dress will differ according to personality, but also the type of work environment. Let's say you are applying for a job in a startup scene. Then you probably will be a little bit more casual. If you're applying for a job in more of a corporate setting, then you probably have a suit on that's tailored to your fit. If you are applying to more of a fashion role, then you would have something along the lines of maybe something trendy or really showcasing your own personal flair or pizzazz or style. So you catch my drift. Basically, you want to make sure that you're appropriately dressed for the industry. So basically, you want to make sure that it's appropriate to that specific context, industry-wise, but also it reflects a part of your personality because you want to make sure that you stand out. Remember, the hiring manager is not just meeting with you that day. They're meeting with so many other people. You want to make sure that you are memorable, that you stand out so that they can actually remember you. You want to stay top of mind. So do something that's going to be a little bit memorable. For example, if you're applying to a corporate job and you have your black suit or your navy suit, which is typically the colors that we would probably recommend for that specific industry and that specific setting, but you could add a red scarf to stand out a little bit, or you add maybe a cute little bow tie or neck scarf or something else, maybe some cute earrings or whatever else that you feel can help you stand out. You want to put your best foot forward, and ultimately you're wearing something that's comfortable because that is going to help you be more comfortable in the interview. So make sure that whatever you wear is comfortable so that you can feel confident in it and secure. You don't want anything that's going to be causing you to fidget, right? Sometimes you might see people adjusting their sweater or their scarf or their dress or doing something with their hair. All of that is distracting. It's going to distract you. It's going to distract the person who's interviewing you. So you want to make sure that you're not fidgeting. So to sum up strategy 4, you want to dress for the part, dress for the job that you want, not the job that you have, and make sure that it's appropriate for the context in which you are interviewing in, but also somehow to be able to showcase your personal flair. Because ultimately, you are you, and we want to be able to share that with the people that you are surrounded by. And the people will also appreciate that more because you're not just trying to be a cookie cutter image of everyone else they're hiring. You will stand out, and that will help you maybe stay in their mind and hopefully get you hired, right? Number 5, I want you to make sure that you build in your active listening. This is really important because, again, an interview is a conversation. That is how you should be treating it. You want to make sure that you're listening to the questions being asked of you, but also finding some opportunity to maybe interject with a question, if appropriate, when appropriate. You want to find these nice little segues into deeper conversation, more meaningful conversation. So you want to be attuned to what they're saying. And to do this, you want to show active listening by body language. We're leaning in, right, to the conversation and to the person. We also want to make sure that we are really focused, really laser focused on what they're saying. We're not thinking about other things that might be distracting us. Make sure that we're actively listening. Discourse markers using yes, okay, great, things like that to show that we're listening. We can also do that through our nonverbals, such as leaning in, having a slight smile on our face, making eye contact. And then paraphrasing is also a really good one to mirror what the person is saying. Because remember, there will also be some little chit chat, some small talk that can be meaningful. It doesn't have to be superficial, but that also depends on you. So make sure that you are listening for these moments to really shine and show that you are an authentic, confident, poised communicator. Number 6, we will have a separate video about this that I will link below, but this is about prepping your interview questions. Now, I really advise you to put this in your prep because when you are in the interview, you want to make sure that you are attuned to what you're talking about. So if you formulate thoughtful questions ahead of time, you'll be clear on what to ask them. We always end the interview with the questions that we have for the hiring manager. When they ask you, what are your questions? And you say, I don't have any questions. You answered it all for me. That is not going to reflect positively on you. So you want to make sure that you have really thoughtful questions, possibly about the future of the company or maybe how they differentiate themselves. But ultimately, you do have questions. And it's not the questions like, do you like working here? We don't really want the yes or no types of questions. You want to think more open-ended so that you will have a discussion about it, right? So this is really important. And I want you to have those prepped ahead of time. Of course, when you're in the interview, you can always change it. If you're really prepped and you're sure about what you're going to ask them, then why not in the middle of having the conversation, you interject, you chime in with asking one of these prepared questions. That is totally okay. And in fact, highly encouraged because it really shows that you did your homework and you're smoothly and seamlessly adding it in. You're not just waiting formulaically to the end to ask these questions. So go ahead and do that, but make sure that you prep first. So be sure to keep an eye out for our video about how to prep really good questions, and that'll help guide you when you're trying to write your own questions for the interview. What does it do? Well, it shows that you are really committed and you're interested and you're passionate about working at that place because you've done some research about what it is like to work there, or you have some questions that you want to know more about. And it really shows that you are curious and interested. It also shows that you are scoping out other opportunities and you're not just going to take any opportunity that comes your way. You are being quite selective about the different roles, because if it doesn't meet your needs or your desires, then you're not going to accept the job if it's offered to you, right? So it shows that you're also really proactively seeing if they're also a good fit for you, not just if you're a good fit for them. And that's what's really great and powerful about having great questions. So again, you don't necessarily have to keep all of the questions that you've prepped for the end of the interview. Because you've prepped them in advance and you have an idea as to what you're going to ask them that you really do want to know the answers to, you can put them in sporadically in the actual interview. That's a conversation. And my last tip for you, Explearners, number 7, write a thank you note or a thank you email or send a carrier pigeon. We have a separate video that's all about writing a thank you note after the interview. And this is really important. You don't want to miss out on doing this. So we will flesh it out in more detail in that separate video. You want to add it in your prep because it'll help you stay aware and stay attuned to what you discussed in the interview, right? So a lot of times when we go in, especially if we're nervous, we have the tendency of forgetting. Yeah, forgetting what we actually talked about in the interview. And it sounds crazy, but when you're reflecting on the interview that went well or didn't go so well, we have a hard time remembering what, we talked about in the interview. So if you build it into your planning and to your prep phase, then you're going to be able to keep note about the different things that happen, what kind of witty banter you exchanged, some specific details that they shared with you, the answers that you provided, the answers that they provided, right? Things that really showed that you were there in the interview. So saying, thank you for your time, I learned so much, is so generic, so boring, and they're going to forget about you. We are going to talk about this in more detail. So be sure to check out the video about making sure that you write a solid thank you note. All right, Explearners, that's a wrap on this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. Do give it a thumbs up. It means so much to us. And make sure that you hit that subscribe button. It really helps our channel out. It allows us to make more videos like this for you because we want to help you become the best communicator you can be, and so that you can rise to meet any personal and professional communication challenge that comes your way. I will see you in the next video. Happy Explearning!